of How Movies Are Made, the series here on the studio sessions. And if you haven't heard the first episode, I will link it below. We went over the development from idea to development, from idea to script, and like how movies start and where movies really start, which is with that initial idea, that initial thought. And we talked about a little bit about development. And in episode 2, I want to do a bit of a deep dive on development. I want to go over what development actually is, why it's important, and share a little bit about my personal practical experiences with it when I was making Like a Butterfly. So if that sounds interesting to you, keep listening or watching. And if you have been enjoying the series, make sure you're subscribed so you see when the next episode comes out. Click the like button, share it with a fellow movie lover who would also find this interesting, and leave me a comment and let me know what part of filmmaking you love to deep dive on and look at the most. I would love to hear. Okay, so what development is. Development is not pre-production. We're not there yet. We have not even made it to pre-production where you're making production plans. That is not even happening. Development is where that idea finishes forming into a film that you can then take out and run with and put into action. So during development, you have things like script writing, casting, financing, timelines being made, all to see, can this actually work? And develop it into enough of an idea where we could say, yeah, let's go into pre-production and get things set up for production. Development isn't the flashy part like we talked about. It's not the lights, camera, action. It's not the fun, flashy part that looks glamorous. But it is important. A script is not just a one-time you write it. Scripts get rewritten multiple times. There's several revisions, there's things added, things taken out. It goes through several drafts, and that's totally normal. And even when you have a finished script, that does not mean development is done. Development is not done until you're ready to go into pre-production. And that includes seeing if there is funding for this film idea. Will somebody take this script or this idea and put money behind it? Can you shop it around and go, will you help cover the costs of making this? Will you support this idea? And that's a key part of it, because if you don't have the funds, the film never gets off its feet. You're also looking at basically the logistics. Casting. Can we get the cast? Does this work? You're looking at budgets. You're looking at timeline to see how it all fleshes out. You're looking at where possibly would we need to film this? What locations would we need? What would the cost of those locations be? What would the cost of any special effects, visual effects, anything needed to make this idea come to life? Do we have the resources to do that or not? And that is key. That is really important, because if you don't answer those questions, you'll run into problems later. You need to make sure you have all of that in line before, so that I know we can get this, this, and this done. And it's all set. So the stages that you can go through, or the steps within development, look like having that idea and molding that idea into something usable in a script, writing a script, packaging this script and film and idea into something you can then take places. And that includes having a director attached to the project, having cast, and you want to have the team all on the same page. You want to have clarity in the vision. You want to have an alignment in the vision so that everybody knows and is staying on the right path towards the same goal. And then you start developing a budget for what you think making this film will cost, taking into consideration director, cast, location, visual effects, special effects, everything I mentioned a minute ago. And then that gives you a number you're seeking for funding. And then you develop the funding. You seek the funding in all the various ways you're able to seek funding. You also want to look at the marketability of the film. Is there a significant audience? This is where test things can happen. This is where feelers can be put out, or you can kind of test the waters in different ways to see, is there actually a market for this film? And that'll tell you a lot with where you want to take the project. You also have to think about timing as far as what the realistic timeline of getting the film finished is. When would it be finished? What does that mean for goals as far as distribution? How does distribution look? What are you thinking for distribution? Is this going to be something you try to get into festivals, because that significantly impacts your timeline and time considerations? So, those are all things you work on in development. And as those form, as you see what the script is like, you see what the director and the cast you have attached are like, and how they're melding, and how everybody's working together. You see what the realistic budget you'll need for this is, and can that be achieved? You'll see the responses you're getting from funding sources, and look at the timeline of, is that what I want? Is that the distribution I'm hoping for this film? Each project can have different answers to those questions, but those are important to get answered before you move any further. So, evaluating and answering all these questions is important to decide, does this go forward? Do we keep it in development a little bit longer? Some movies sit in development for years, literally years of development before they ever become a thing. Or they just disappear into the ether and don't ever become a thing. So, this is where you answer that question. Do we keep going? Do we hold it in development a little bit longer? Do we work on this a little more? Or is this just turning out not to be something that's going to actually flesh out and turn into a film? This is where you answer that. And of course, until that question is answered, you really don't want to go any further, so that you haven't put money, resources, time into it without knowing those things, because that can cause problems later in various ways. Whether you didn't fully flesh out your budget and funding, and then you are seeking more funds at the end to finish because you did not have enough, or you have issues with your team, your director, cast, producers, not working well together, and it is not going well trying to accomplish the task of production, or post production, or pre production, or any part of making the film. Because if the team isn't working well together, that's just a recipe for bad in a film. Really anywhere, but they're specifically talking films here. So there's that. If there's not a market for it, you're just kind of shouting into the ether and not getting a response. All of those things are important to not hold back on figuring out. So this, I guess, in and of itself becomes a conversation about the importance of knowing the plan before putting that plan into action, not jumping the gun. And that's why the development phase is important. This tells you what the next step looks like. And if you don't know what the next steps look like, you can't accurately and intentionally take the next step. That has to come first, because anything not resolved in the development phase bleeds over into the rest of making the film. You're basically protecting things from not being rushed. You are preventing yourself from running into not accomplishing your goal. And it gives you the best chance of being successful with the film as possible. I think there are certain films you can tell what development looked like, and maybe whether it could have used a little more development, had too much development, or why things just either clicked perfectly or did not. You hear rumors of some stuff that happens on set of people not getting along. You can hear issues with a multitude of script rewrites during production, like while you're in the midst of filming, literally rewriting that day's page. Things like that don't bode well for the process being successful and the end result being what you want it to be. So that's why. And you can see it in the end result when things like the development phase are not actually given the time it needs. So I also want to take a minute to share a little bit about my personal experience with the development phase of a film on Like a Butterfly. I also want to take this opportunity to share a really special experience coming. As you guys know, I released my film Like a Butterfly last January, and it is currently available to stream if you would like to on our website, link in the description. But I am actually proud and so excited to be offering a winter screening series for the film. There will be 3 different screenings: February 28th, March 14th, and March 21st. And tickets are now on sale for those screenings. You can head to the description, the show notes, and buy a ticket. It will be not just a screening of the film, but also a time of conversation and Q&A after. So almost like a community movie theater experience, but from home because it's all online. So if you enjoy a night at the movies and you would like to have a good conversation around a movie, I would love to have you there. Like I said, I will put the link to the tickets in the description box. You can head there, buy your ticket, and I hope to see you there. So when we were making Like a Butterfly, when I was making Like a Butterfly, I had that idea, and it actually took me a long time to decide what that would fully flesh into looking like. I wasn't sure which angle I really wanted to look at and how I wanted to meld them together. Because I had a couple of different ways of sharing experiences I was thinking about, and I didn't want it to feel haphazard. I didn't want it to feel puzzle pieced together rather than a neat line of a story that made sense, that wasn't confusing. And so it took me a couple of tries to figure that out. I spent a lot of time to figure that out. And then I also had to figure out some of the logistics of who I was going to have available to talk to, how that was going to work, what kind of crew I was going to have available to help, if any. I had to answer a lot of those before things really took off and I started making progress. And I had moments during that where I was really like feeling anxious almost because I really wanted to accomplish this. And I'm not a particularly patient person in that way. Like when I want to do something, I just get overly excited and I have all of the ideas and I'm like, let's do all of the ideas. And I had to slow myself down, take some perspective from the people around me, and go, it deserves the time this will take to make it right, to make it the best it can be. So I had to slow myself down more than once. I had to remind myself to slow down and relook at things, reevaluate, and kind of take stock and look at the moment I was in right now. Instead of worrying so much about where I needed to get to, I wanted to take stock of where I was. And I would say there was all of those moments that led to the film being what it became and what it is. And it would not be the same film if I hadn't taken that time, slowed down, evaluated things, and really kept my perspective on what mattered within the project. There are a lot of details you're juggling in development when you're trying to figure things out. I had a vision for how I wanted to accomplish this. And as development was happening, as I was getting those things in place, I had to be okay with adapting how I needed to, with being okay with if it looked a little different than I had initially hoped. And I think that was for the benefit of the project. I don't think it hurt it. I think it allowed it to be what it was and kept the heart of it, which was the most important, because I didn't want any of those details to take away from the point of the project, which was sharing the stories. And I didn't want to lose that. So certainly there were times where I wanted to get things done faster. I wanted to get it out faster. I want, all of those things. I initially had a different vision for certain elements of distribution and things like that. And I had to be okay with it looking different and letting the film be what it was. And I think a lot of what helped me reorient myself in the development phase was remembering my whole point of the project, like why I wanted to do this project in the first place. And just keeping that as the focus, just remembering my why, I think was probably the biggest thing that not only helped me prioritize and make the best decisions I could for the project itself, but also feel okay and calm within myself for things taking longer than I wanted them to when I was ready to get it out into the world. It was better that I didn't rush it and that I took the time to evaluate what would be best for the project and keep the why, keep the point of the project the main focus. And there were very hard moments with that where it was hard to slow myself down. It was hard to give in to that timeline where I wanted to get this done quicker. I was really excited. I was raring to go. I was so into it. But if I had rushed it, it would not be what it is. And I had to reorient myself. I also had to really listen to the people around me in that and let them also reorient me and remind me of the point of the project and what was best for the film. So, yeah, all of that to say, I learned a lot of lessons in the development phase. Not only did I learn a lot specifically for that project, but I also just learned how important development is and like why I need to take that time and the value in that. Honestly, it can be fun. It's not the lights, camera flashy, but it can be fun. Like it's the you're writing the script. Like it is work. And it's fun, creative work, just in a little bit different of a format. So it's also a lot of logistics. I'm not gonna lie. It's a lot of logistics. You're seeing if it's actually possible. And I have to say, for me, worrying about money was probably my least favorite part because I really cared about it. And I really didn't want anything like that to get in the way of it happening or having what it deserved, you know? So that part was a big lesson too. So, yeah, that was my personal experience. And that's a development deep dive for you. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful if you've ever wondered what development for a film even means. And I would love to hear if you have noticed in films where you feel like maybe they should have taken a little bit more time, or maybe they didn't need as much time as they took. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you are interested in the winter screening series, we would love to have you there. Find the links in the description box, and I hope you join us. I will see you guys next week for our next episode. Bye. The Studio Sessions is a Butterfly Entertainment production. You can keep up with all of our podcasts, YouTube videos, films, and other projects on our Instagram page. We are at Butterfly Entertainment Group. Thanks for listening.